Hey there, and welcome to my new backyard. This is where we live now. We moved a little bit ago, and now today it's snowing, and I was just like, I have to go out and show off how wonderful this place is. And there's some great creeks, some great other places to look at, and so let's kind of take a look and see what we're doing. This video will be a little bit of just kind of a tour of the place, but also we're going to take some pictures. Out yonder there is a swampy place where it's just the water trickles through so slowly, and it's just so gorgeous in the hoarfrost. Today in the snow, I have a feeling it's going to be just amazing. And so let's kind of just start walking back here and see what we can do, see what we can find in some of these awesome places here in our 4.8 acres. So as I cross through this first fence here, we leave the backyard for the house, and we can see we have this thing here. This creek comes from the south, and that is probably about a mile and a half up. It just comes up from the ground, and then it just flows right through our property. We got this bridge here, goes to the end of the property, and then flows out towards the front of the property. And this is our main creek. This is where we take all of our irrigation water for the pasture, and we have a pump that will put it out there. And let's walk back there and show you that now. So back here is where we have our hay pasture, which we're going to convert mostly to a lavender field and what my wife calls a food forest. Right now I've got some horses back there because a local rancher needed some place to wean his little ones, and we needed, to have all this eaten down. This was at the end of the season about 30 some inches high, this hay, and we didn't get a chance to harvest it. So we just said, hey, we want this eaten down. We also want your horse's fertilizer. And here we basically did a little bit of a swap there. So now just the little ones are being weaned from mama, and that's where we are now with just a few horses left, but they will be gone here shortly. All right, let's take a look now. We're going to go all the way back there, and I'm going to show you our second creek, and then we're going to get on to the swamp area. So you can see here, I'm on the edge of our property, and we have the water starting and all these trees. We're actually going to end up getting rid of most of these and planting other items. And it comes from over there down south. It's actually part of the same creek that we just saw before. It splits up yonder, comes into this big pond on our neighbor's property, and then it comes through here, as what we'll see in a little bit. But over here at the corner of the property, we've got another creek that I want to show you, and then we'll get to the goods. All right, here we are at this other creek that's just here at the corner of our property. And so we have these cattle gates, or whatever you want to call these. I'm not a rancher, I don't know the exact terms for these items, but these gates are set up because the previous owners had some cattle. And so it just comes in through here, it goes out over there, and we just have this little bit of almost an island over there, and it comes from underneath this bridge. You can see that fencing, that's where our property is. And this is just something that once we remove all these items and can dress this up, this is going to be an absolutely gorgeous place to shoot as well. And then of course this is now back here, this is our back pasture. This is naturally a very moist ground. I don't think we'll need to irrigate anything down here because all the way up there where those trees are, those line of trees, those are holding back the pond, and it just seeps down into our property and it becomes very moist down here. But let's go take a look where it's actually still a little bit of pond in our place, and that's where I wanted to shoot today. So we're heading over there now. We've lived here actually about 4 months already. It just Time has flown by. And this is actually the first time I've been able to go out and shoot on this. It's almost a crime. But I did have, we had to move in, had the start of the new quarter, finished the quarter at school, and now we're done with that quarter. We're in the winter break, and oh my goodness, this is just absolutely gorgeous. Take a look at these bunch grass items that we have coming up here. Just amazing. I love it. And where that water is, that's where I'm actually looking to get into. And you may have seen as I'm walking out here, I don't have, actual winter boots on. Let's take a quick look at the footwear. I've got my Keen water sandals on, but underneath those, if I can lift my pant leg a little bit, I've got my boundary socks, water socks on. And that's gonna basically keep my foot warm, even though I'm gonna get them wet and in the water most likely. So I'm just gonna set up here now. I'm gonna find a few things to shoot, and we'll talk through it as we find those subjects to shoot. So the first image I found out here, and I've also got the video going on here so I can switch to that and show you, at least in the HD formatting, what it looks like. And that's kind of how I was framing it up anyway, even though the full frame is a slightly different aspect ratio. I knew I was gonna have to crop it. So my vision was basically what we have right here on screen right now. And that is, we've got these grasses coming up from the left and stretching out, and then I've got some of these other things from behind that are in the water, and they're just kind of coming up. But I used a shallow depth of field so I could hopefully keep those from being in focus, because if they were in focus, then the eye is just going to go right to them. I want them to know I want the viewer, I should say, to know the atmosphere, to know what this place is about and what this scene is about. But I don't want the viewer to gravitate to those items on the far right side and just, that's all they look at then. They stop there and they can't move anywhere else. We need to have the viewer coming back and around, and just hopefully a nice circular motion with the viewer's eye, and hopefully that will be achieved here. Now, if it doesn't go down and it goes up and over, that's fine. You're a different viewer than someone else. I think we have two different paths here. Starts on the left, launches up towards the middle, to the right. It either comes down and around or goes up, because those items down below, of course, in the background, those are pointing upwards, and so that might make you go up and over. All right, so I'm gonna take a few more shots, get a few more things coming through, and then we'll go find the next scene. I think what I'm also going to try and do is I'm going to do a panoramic. So I'm going to be able to take the length of this whole scene and magnify its importance across the whole field. That's really what this is about. It's about those grasses that are covered with this new snow and how they're stretching out, and that's what I want to emphasize that. So that's where we're going to see what happens in this next image. When I do a panel like that, I don't have a pano head. So what I'm doing is I turn on the leveling device. The camera has an accelerometer, and I can tell when you're tilted, when you're level, all things like that. And so I take my first frame, make sure it's level. I go and I overlap 25 to 30%, depending on the length and a whole lot of other things, but I overlap a good amount. And then I use that accelerometer to make sure when I've achieved my next framing that I can still get level, because that's my biggest problem from frame to frame, being level and just making sure everything is aligned up as best as it can be, so the software has just a little bit of work instead of a lot of work to do to make those things come together. So I think that's going to be pretty nice. I was able to extend it quite a bit on the left side, a little bit on the right side. I've got more of these things on the right side that are just going to be garbage. I don't want to include that, so I didn't include that. And then of course I know I'm going to crop it a little bit on the top and bottom, and so I always like to have a little bit of wiggle room when I do a panel too. I think I've got that wiggle room. I think I've got what I need. So we'll see in post-production what happens, but pretty confident in what I have right here. All right, time to find my next scene. This is kind of muddy right here, and I'm so glad I have my water socks, because my feet hardly know that they're in water. And this is really cool right here. I do have some kind of pseudo macro capabilities with this lens, and I should have my, what are they called? Extension tubes in the bag but I left the bag over there where the water isn't quite so seeping through the ground, at least in this cold weather anyway. Otherwise, this is just all marshy right here. And of course, I'm in the thick of it. I'm right in the water areas right here. But I like the chaos that's happening here. I just don't know that I'm gonna make an image right here. And I'd hate to walk through it and then see something and say, oh, I've ruined it with my footprints. So I think I'm gonna walk around just in case I come back to this. There's potentially lots of good things in this area. What I'm looking for is how all these different bunches interact with each other. And then we can see into the depths where it's really dark when the snow doesn't reach. We can see some areas where it's wide open, the snow is just a plain white. We have the interaction of the water where it's kind of coming through. There's so much to pay attention to and so much to be thinking about. Now this one over there, I was a little bit concerned. You know, I didn't know exactly how it was going to come together between the two clumps of grass and the like. And as I look further, this is really interesting. I've got actually this bunch of grass coming this way, that bunch of grass coming this way, and then that bunch of grass kind of lifting up and coming over. And then just a chaotic mishmash of junk in the center. I like what I see here. I think it'll be a wider angle shot. I'm gonna be looking a little bit down on it. There's just a huge void right in the middle that I'm trying to fix. I'm trying to reconcile how I'm gonna deal with that. So I've got this water coming through at an angle underneath. I've got these grasses coming here in the foreground. I then have these other grasses coming from this side, and then this bunch over here coming up with a little bit of energy this way. I just need to make sure I get a little wider here to include more of these items up in the top of the frame there. So I'm really liking what I'm seeing here. I just need to fine tune the composition, and then we'll make, I think, a pretty good picture. I've also decided, because I'm going wide angle on this, I really need to have a longer depth of field as well. I want everything to be in focus if possible. So I'm going to be possibly even going up to 200 ISO to help achieve that, just so I can have a really good long depth of field. I'm thinking in the neighborhood of 14 to 16 f stop range, aperture range, and maybe even testing it out at f22. When I get up to there, I know on this lens I'm going to start vignetting a little bit, not vignetting, distorting a little bit, and I don't want those diffraction distortions coming through and fighting the sharpness of the little intricate pieces of snow and grass and things like that. So in that neighborhood of f16, that's where I want to be. So what I ended up having to do, I started focusing back there, but then these grasses here just weren't quite sharp enough at f16. I've got a depth of field preview on the camera, and so what I ended up doing is I just manually shifted that focus a little more this way, so it's focusing midfield, and then that gets these in focus in that depth of field range, and it gets those in focus, gets everything in focus, everything's happy and in focus, and now it's time to just fine-tune the composition and make a couple of shots here. I really do think this one's going to be successful in black and white. The other ones, they could probably go either way, but this one definitely cries for black and white. There's just too much chaos otherwise. We get a little bit of change in the colors going on, and I think the brain is just going to look at it and say, I don't know what to make of it. But when we shift it to black and white, we relieve the brain from having to solve those issues about color, and we just look at the form, the shape, the textures, the energy that's being created. Those all have greater emphasis, and that's what I want for this picture. So I'm going to go ahead and change lenses right now. So I wanted to show you, I've got this video recorder going on camera now, and right now it is at f4, and when I talk about the idea of depth of field preview and the like, just wanted to show you what that was about. So now I'm going to rotate it and go to about f16. and we had a little bit of shaky there, so I apologize for that. However, you saw what happened with those blades of grass in the foreground. They just became sharp, and so that's what I see on screen, and that's just everything. I can verify everything is perfectly sharp and is wonderful. And I like this wider angle. I just get more of it, and that's what this image is about. It's about all these different angles and these different energy lines coming into the center, and the wider angle achieves that. So it's a good choice, I think, to make, to shift over to the wide angle lens. So I'll grab a few frames and then keep going with looking for more pictures. So I'm going to wrap it up with this portion of the video, and I'm going to keep hunting though for new pictures, and when we get to post-production side of things and reviewing the shoot, then you might see some additional items that we didn't cover here on the first part. But one last thing I want to leave you with. You can see I'm angling the camera. We've got this fence line here. There's a little bit of a rise back there. I just can't wait to plant all my flowers and the lavender and the other things that are going to happen right here as we come down into the swamp area. It's going to make it so beautiful, so gorgeous. We're going to have some trees coming in that it's going to take years to make this happen, but we have lots of plans, lots of hopes and dreams of what we're going to be able to do with this property. And of course, the pictures that I'm going to be able to make in my own backyard. That is so exciting that literally I have a backyard that is effectively an artist's canvas, and I'm just thrilled to be here and be able to make these images, and of course share them with you guys. So hopefully you got something from this. I really appreciate your time and looking at what I've got here. Please hit that subscribe button, hit the follow bell, the little bell icon thingamabob there. And if you'd like to reach out, I would love to have your questions. If you've got questions about this video or anything else I've produced, let me know. I would love to field those questions, and maybe it would lead to a new video.